On September 8, 2025, Kathmandu awoke to tension. The city, usually bustling with life and energy, felt eerily quiet. The air was thick with an unspoken anxiety, as if the city itself was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. The streets, normally filled with the sounds of vendors and the chatter of pedestrians, were subdued. People moved with a sense of urgency, their faces etched with worry. It was a day that would soon be etched into the collective memory of the nation, and ended the day in tragedy. As the sun set, the city was enveloped in a somber silence. The once vibrant streets were now deserted, the air heavy with the remnants of smoke and the echoes of chaos. The events of the day had left an indelible mark on the city and its people. By nightfall, the city's vibrant streets were stained with blood. 19 dead, over 100 injured in Nepal's worst civil unrest in decades. The scenes of chaos and violence were a stark contrast to the peaceful protests that had begun earlier in the day. Emergency responders worked tirelessly to aid the injured, their efforts a small beacon of hope amidst the devastation. The air was thick with tear gas and burning tires, echoing a generation's disillusionment. The streets were filled with the sounds of shouting, the crackle of burning tires, and the ominous presence of riot police. It was a scene of utter chaos, a physical manifestation of the deep-seated frustrations that had been simmering for years. This was more than a protest. It was a desperate cry from Nepal's youth who felt their future slipping away. The young protesters, their faces a mix of anger and desperation, were fighting for more than just their rights. They were fighting for their future, their dreams, and their very identity. The government's ban on social media was the spark that ignited years of frustration. For many young Nepalis, social media was more than just a way to stay connected. It was a lifeline, a platform for expression, and a means of economic survival. The ban was seen as an attack on their freedom and their future. For young Nepalis, losing access to these platforms meant losing their voice, their community, and their economic lifeline. The sense of loss was palpable. As young people stared at blank screens, their connection to the world abruptly severed. The ban had not just silenced their voices, it had isolated them from their communities and cut off vital economic opportunities. The crackdown exposed deep rifts between a controlling government and a digitally native generation. The protests were a stark illustration of the growing divide between the old guard and the new, between those who sought to maintain control and those who demanded change. The streets of Kathmandu had become a battleground, a place where the future of the nation was being fiercely contested. The deaths of students, entrepreneurs, and activists have turned this movement into a defining moment for Nepal. The loss of these young lives has galvanized the nation, turning grief into a powerful force for change. Memorials have sprung up across the city, a poignant reminder of the human cost of the struggle for freedom and justice. Now the nation faces a painful reckoning. Will this sacrifice bring change, or become another tragic chapter? The future of Nepal hangs in the balance, as the nation grapples with the aftermath of the protests. The sacrifices made by the young protesters have set the stage for a potential transformation, but the path forward remains uncertain. The blood spilled in Kathmandu is a debt the future must answer for. The events of September 8, 2025 have left an indelible mark on the nation, a reminder of the high price of freedom and the enduring struggle for justice. The future of Nepal will be shaped by how it responds to this moment of crisis and whether it can rise to meet the challenges ahead. Nepal's Gen Z led the protests, stepping into the streets with a sense of urgency and purpose that electrified the nation. Their voices, once confined to online spaces, now echoed through Kathmandu's avenues, demanding to be heard. These young activists weren't just reacting. They were shaping the narrative, channeling years of frustration into a powerful movement for change. This is a generation raised online and shaped by political upheaval, their worldview forged in the fires of uncertainty and hope. They grew up watching leaders make promises and break them, learning early that their future depended on their own actions. For them, the internet is not a luxury. It's their lifeline for education, work, and activism. It's where they learn, connect, and build communities that transcend physical boundaries. The digital world is their classroom, their workplace, and their rallying ground. Social media became their parliament, a space to organize, critique, and demand accountability. Here, hashtags replaced party slogans, and viral posts carried more weight than official speeches. Every like, share, and comment was a vote for change. Unlike older generations, they're deeply skeptical of traditional politics, seeing corruption and disconnect everywhere. They question authority, challenge the status quo, and refuse to accept empty rhetoric. Their skepticism is not apathy. It's a demand for genuine leadership. The government's ban wasn't just about apps. It was an attack on their identity and future. It threatened the very tools they use to dream, to organize, and to express themselves. For these youth, digital rights are human rights. When they took to the streets, they fought for their right to speak, connect, and shape their country. Their protests were not just about policy, they were about dignity, belonging, and the promise of a better tomorrow. The protests were a declaration of agency, a refusal to be silenced or sidelined. Each chant, each banner, each act of defiance was a message. We are here, and we matter. Their digital skills translated into real-world mobilization, catching the government off guard. They coordinated in real time, outmaneuvering authorities and amplifying their message to the world. Nepal's youth proved they are a force the state can no longer ignore. Their movement is a testament to the power of a connected generation, one that refuses to be left behind and is determined to shape the future of their country. The government claimed the social media ban was to curb misinformation and protect harmony. But for most Nepalists, it was a thinly veiled attempt to silence dissent and consolidate power. With 90% of the population online, social media had become Nepal's main public square. The ban cut off vital channels for debate, activism, and holding officials accountable. It was seen as profoundly undemocratic, a regression to state control and censorship. For a generation raised with a free internet, the ban felt like an amputation. It severed connections, stifled voices, and fueled outrage. The government underestimated how essential these platforms were to daily life and democracy. Instead of restoring order, the ban unleashed a wave of fury that shook the nation. The social media ban wasn't just a blow to free speech. It devastated Nepal's digital economy. Young entrepreneurs, artists, and small businesses lost their storefronts and income overnight. In a country with high youth unemployment, the digital economy had been a rare lifeline. The ban wiped out livelihoods, plunging thousands into financial crisis. This economic pain fueled the protests, turning a fight for rights into a fight for survival. The government's move was seen as a betrayal, sacrificing youth prosperity for political control. The protest in Kathmandu erupted into a fierce confrontation at the gates of parliament. Thousands of young people surged against police barricades, determined to be heard. The air crackled with tension as chants turned to clashes. Rocks and bottles hurled, riot police struggling to hold the line. The chaos escalated. A government ambulance was overturned and set ablaze, symbolizing the crowd's fury. The attempt to storm parliament was a direct challenge to state authority. Protesters broke through defenses, demanding change, not just asking for it. This audacious assault transformed the protest into an insurrection in the eyes of the authorities. The burning ambulance became the day's defining image, a symbol of defiance and chaos. The stage was set for a deadly response. As protesters surged forward and breached the police barricades, the atmosphere in Kathmandu shifted from tense anticipation to outright chaos. What began as a demonstration for change quickly spiraled out of control as the lines between protesters and police blurred in the confusion. Eyewitnesses recall the moment the barricades fell, a wave of bodies pushing forward, shouts echoing through the streets, and the sudden jarring escalation of force. Tear gas and rubber bullets were deployed first, filling the air with acrid smoke and sending crowds scattering. But soon, the situation took a deadly turn. Eyewitnesses described the unmistakable crack of live ammunition, a sound that cut through the chaos and signaled a new terrifying phase of the confrontation. The police, once seen as a barrier, now became a direct threat to the lives of those on the streets. Panic erupted instantly. Protesters, many of them young and unarmed, ran for cover as gunfire rang out. The crowd, once united in purpose, fractured into desperate groups seeking safety wherever they could find it. The fear was palpable. People screamed, stumbled, and clung to each other, unsure if they would make it out alive. Protesters described scenes of utter chaos, friends collapsing to the ground, wounded by bullets, while others tried to drag them to safety. The streets became a battleground, with fear and fury mixing in the air. For many, the violence was not just physical, but psychological, leaving deep scars that would not heal easily. The official police line was that they acted in self-defense, claiming the crowd posed a threat. But to those who were there, it felt like a brutal crackdown, an attempt to punish and silence rather than disperse. The trust between the youth and the authorities was shattered in those moments. The use of deadly force left an indelible scar on the city and its people. Grieving protesters gathered in the aftermath, mourning those lost and struggling to comprehend the scale of the violence. The sense of betrayal ran deep, as families and friends tried to make sense of the tragedy that had unfolded before their eyes. In the days that followed, the police presence only grew more intimidating. Officers in riot gear patrolled the streets, enforcing curfews and stifling any sign of dissent. For many, the police were no longer seen as protectors, but as enforcers of repression and fear. Yet even in the face of such violence, the spirit of the movement endured. Candlelight vigils were held for the slain, and makeshift memorials sprang up across the city. The victims were remembered not just as casualties, but as martyrs whose sacrifice gave new meaning to the struggle. Instead of quelling dissent, the crackdown only fueled the determination of the youth. The movement gained momentum, as more people joined in solidarity, their voices rising in defiance against the violence they had witnessed. The trauma of that day forged a hardened resolve among the protesters. They emerged from the violence more united, more determined, and more willing to continue the fight for justice, no matter the cost, no matter how long it would take. After the crackdown, Kathmandu's streets were scenes of chaos and suffering. With hospitals overwhelmed, protesters became first responders, using motorcycles as ambulances, tearing clothes for bandages. The city's medical system buckled under the flood of casualties. Both protesters and police were among the wounded, but the power imbalance was clear. The spontaneous community response revealed deep solidarity and resilience. Young people risked their safety to help the injured, embodying the movement's humanity. Acts of collective care became powerful symbols of resistance. Shared suffering only deepened the youth's commitment to their cause. The social media ban was just the final straw. Nepal's youth have long endured government corruption and incompetence. They see daily evidence of graft, crumbling infrastructure, and a rigged job market. Social media had become their tool to expose corruption and demand accountability. The ban was seen as a self-serving move to hide official wrongdoing. Protesters weren't just fighting for digital rights, they wanted clean government and a fair future. Corruption is the core grievance uniting this generation. Their movement is fueled by a moral clarity. Until corruption ends, Nepal's future is at risk. The youth are determined to be the generation that breaks the cycle. The violence of September 2025 has pushed Nepal to a democratic crossroads. The protests revealed a deep divide between the old political order and a digitally empowered youth. Gen Z has shown it will not be silenced, organizing leaderless, decentralized movements with digital tools. Their fight mirrors a global trend, young people demanding transparency and real democracy. The government now faces a crisis of legitimacy, especially among the young. The path forward is perilous. Repression or dialogue, more violence or real reform. Nepal's future may be decided by this generation, whose voice grows louder with every sacrifice. The world is watching. Nepal's youth are awake, organized, and determined to claim their future.